What's up? So today I wanted to talk about how to make custom sustains in Audica. I just would like to see more great sustains in general. So what I was basically going to show is how I did it on my most recent map here for Starstorm. Basically, what I start off with is I create a project file where I'm going to drop in the audio track for the song. I do this to go ahead and do this to create the silence before the track starts. You can use Not Reaper to do this, but if you do that and then go back later to try and use a different project file for your sustains, getting the silence synced up perfectly is kind of a pain. Doing this by owning FL Studio is a lot easier because I can save this file and come back later in order to add my sustains after I've already used it once for the silence. But I do want to try to make this accessible for people who just want to use like the free demo of FL, because most of this stuff can be done, or pretty much everything can be done with the free demo of FL. It's just a case of you can't save, so you would kind of need to try and do it like all at once. Like, open up the project file, drop your song in, get the spacing right and the BPM right so that you can export that for, your track with silence for Not Reaper. But then after you do that, I would take that time to go ahead and do your sustains as well. It is going to be harder if you don't have the full version of FL, but it is definitely doable. So then once you have your project file where you have the amount of space you're looking for and everything like that, and you've got it, perfectly synced to the BPM, what you'll want to do is, if you want to start working on your sustains, there are a lot of different ways you can do it. Audica has its own filter that it applies to any sound you put out, so it can make just about anything sound cool, honestly. Harmonically dense things like supersaws are really good for that, because the more kind of harmonic content there is, the more weird kind of characteristics that the filter in Audica can bring out in order to make it have more texture, more interesting sounds, especially when you're spinning the guns and it's modulating that effect. So I do use saws quite a bit. In this case, where it's pretty chill in the start, like this. I went with a more subdued, just kind of super saw. You know what? Never mind. We're going to use Harmer instead for super saws. Alright, so another one under, I believe it's special, is Harmer. Now, if you pay for this, this is one of the more expensive plugins, but the free version comes with all the Signature Edition plugins. So, we're going to go to Harmer, just going to go default. Default is just a saw. So if you go there and crank that unison up to like 9. So basically unison is just copying that same wave, so we're doing that same saw wave, but we're copying it 9 times, and then changing the pitch of each one of those copies just a little bit, so it has what's called phase cancellation, so that way the wave is kind of waving in and out. That's where you get that like effect. So by doing that, it just makes it sound really full and nice. You can use these parameters here if you want it to be a little more tight instead of kind of wide and wavy. You can do that, but then if you bump it up, then it's... So for this, I did kind of a very detuned saw, so that way it would be kind of wavy and ethereal, and then just kind of layered that over this initial part here. And so I could have done a couple different things as far as note choices. I could have either followed the lead, and I did consider that, but I went ahead and just tried doing kind of backing chords instead, based off of the key of the song. So these are the chords that match with what the song is. So, because pretty much the whole song almost just goes to that chord progression, just that ascension the whole time. So I went that route, tried it out, sounded good, so I was happy with it. Now, as far as the heavier sounds, when we get into the heavier parts of the song where it's all Audica does fantastic things to very grindy sounds, the filter in Audica. So I opted for what would be considered like a vocoded bass. This is like super complicated where it's like a patcher using Citrus as a modulator with a FM bass and modulating, what did I do? Some saw waves apparently. You do not need to go this hard. I just did this because I wanted two different textures for the really grindy sustains. So this one is like a low, bubbly kind of growl one. And then the alternate one, which I do use for most of the song, is a more grindy kind of thing, like... So it sounds like that. Obviously sounds kind of crappy, like just by itself, but when it has that filter Audica's using placed over it, and you're spinning the guns, and it's like wow, wow, it sounds very cool. This kind of growl bass, if you have Serum, it's really easy to do. Basically just doing a saw that's played very low and doing a bandpass filter on it, and then putting like a ton of distortion and compression on it works well. If you don't, you can... So this is an instance where we will try using Citrus because it is a fantastic frequency modulation synth. If you do want to learn more about sound design in general to make even cooler Audica sustains, what I highly recommend is Seamless R on YouTube. His channel is fantastic. He does all kinds of insane sound design stuff, specifically with FL, that you can still apply to the free version. So in Citrus here, to start off with, what we'll want to do is modulate a, let's see, saw by a sine, I believe is usually the easiest way. So let's do, I just right click to make that sine. So then, oh, you know what, sorry. Whenever it loads up, it's going to do like a default patch for some other random sound, but you can just right click up here and click default to get back to a default one. So in the first operator, doing a saw, or more like a triangle wave actually, and then a sine wave, and then, and let's just do like a real low note so we can hear how it's gonna sound. So then, and you can add, let's see, you know, I'm pretty sure it's the other way around, sorry. So doing that, and this is like a trick straight out of like Seamless basically. Let's see, we're trying to do, so when you're on the oscillator tab here for the triangle wave, just throw one little dupe right there. You're basically just adding one more harmonic up on like the, I don't know, second, third octave interval, whatever. Either way, doing that just gives it some more like high frequency content so that it has more texture. So it's a little overpowering, so we're gonna knock that down a bit. And then you would go to volume, mod X, and drag this die down. And the point of that is so that in the future, when we wiggle the mod X knob here, we can use that to modulate the effect. Then put this up on an unused mixer track. In this case, I know for sure I haven't used 4 yet, so let's throw it there. And now we can start throwing some effects. Personally, a lot of times I do kind of lean on Serum's compressor, but you should be able to still use something like Maximus in order to crunch the ever-loving crap out of it, in order to make it, I don't know, sound more tense. So you could use that in order to, do your bass. And generally, like a pretty solid way to go about it is whatever the root notes of the song are, just kind of follow those. So the root note of this song is like A sharp, so just doing something like that. If we threw that in the song, that would sound pretty good. And then if you want to give it more characteristics, what you can do is actually modulate it in real time while the song's playing. Oh, and in case I didn't go over it, in the Maximus, the preset that I went with was just Destruction, basically just compressing the ever-loving crap out of it, to bring out basically all the full frequency spectrum characteristics of it to make them more intense. And then now that those are more intense, if we were to, say, hold down Control and click, oh my goodness, hold down Control and click here in order to select this area. Then we're going to right click that X button and say create automation clip. Drag that on down, enable, and just draw some lines. Doing that will make it so that now this X knob here is going to wiggle like the lines do as the sound is playing. So of course you would want to do it with more like care to make sure it's matching the timing, make sure it actually sounds good, things like that. But you can at least get the idea that, and like I said, you can use all these plugins, like, because the Signature Edition plugin should be free and available to you with the free version of FL Studio. The only caveat to that is, like I said, that you cannot save. But if you just do all this while you are, in one run, it's possible. So I'd recommend giving it a shot. And a free version of FL is like, I think, $100, and you would have access to Citrus. Wouldn't have access to Harmor, but Citrus can do a lot of stuff. So if you have the patience to watch some seamless videos on how to use it, you could do really amazing sustains with that too. And then even get into actual music creation, because FL is amazing and I love it, and I highly recommend it to anybody. But yeah, so now we've got... So yeah, those are just some ideas, and then once you have your file all together, you're just going to go to export, OGG file. I personally named them, like sustain left for the left one and sustain R for the right one. So we're just going to say test, oh my goodness, test left, save, and then once you're on this panel, you want to make sure OGG is selected. And then in this little drop down here, you want to say mono left only for your left one, obviously. Click start, render, cool. And then once you're, if you are rendering, just a pro tip, just make sure you don't have like one tiny area selected, and also make sure that everything else is unmuted. Otherwise, it'll only render that portion. And you do want to make sure that the source audio, so in this case, the actual song itself, is not active. So clicking this will mute that. So all that's going to be coming out is just the sustain audio, because otherwise it'll muddy things up, won't sound good. So we got the left one. Technically I should re-render it, but and then the right one, we're going to do that, and then go down here and say right only and start for that. As you can see, since I have everything selected correctly, it's taking much longer to render, but you still get the idea. Then once you have those all rendered out, we're just going to abort for now because this is just a demo anyway. You are going to go to Not Reaper. So, whoop-a-doo. Once you're in Not Reaper and you've got your project file loaded up, and boop. And then you're just going to go into song info, and in my case, I already have them loaded up, but there would just be, add left sustain volume. So you would just like click that. It'll bring up the window where you can select the file. Select that one, then add one to the right. You can control how strong they are here, and yeah, then just export it, or throw it into Audica, play it, see how it sounds. Like I said, if it's a more chill song, generally supersaws are a good way to go because they're pretty like laid back, and you just want to make sure your chords match whatever the actual harmonic content of the song is, so you don't want to have stuff that's out of key. Doesn't happen often, but I have seen a couple maps that did that. Yeah, and if everything matches, basses are much easier because they're not going to be polyphonic. They're just going to be one note instead of trying to do like three notes. So if you are worried about being in key, just trying to like kind of stay on the root notes of the song and do it with a single, kind of bass like the ones I just showed you. Those are a pretty solid way to go about it too, if you are worried about that. But otherwise, I would definitely just say experiment. The more time you put into it, the more experimenting you do, the more cool stuff you'll come up with. 90% of sound design is just experimentation. So highly recommend checking that out. Hopefully this was useful to you. Definitely appreciate you in the Audica community, and just keep making cool stuff. I look forward to playing your maps.